Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 Massing of the Colors hosted by the Sun City Center chapter of the Military Order of the World Wars. I am retired Coast Guard Rear Admiral Ron Silva, the presiding official for this event. It is my pleasure to introduce several honored guests. Please hold applause until the end of introductions. Ms. Barty Buckman, representing Congressman Vernon Buchanan. Captain Robert Rodriguez, representing Sheriff Chad Cronister. Shift Commander Angel Herrera, representing Fire Rescue Chief Dennis Jones. Sam Sudman is the Sun City Center Community Association President. And the leaders from each of the participating organizations, please rise and be recognized. We appreciate all of you for attending our Massing of the Colors ceremony. Massing of the Colors is a signature MOWW patriotic ceremony held to rededicate our support of our country and our flag. This ceremony typically involves color guards from military units, ROTC and JROTC units, veterans and civic groups, sheriff and fire rescue departments, and Boy and Girl Scout organizations, all proudly displaying the U.S. flag and their organizational colors. The second question is, why is our Stars and Stripes flag so special and deserving of our honoring it, this special Massing of the Colors ceremony today? From the beginning of our country, our Stars and Stripes flag was special. Our colonial general and first U.S. President George Washington stated about our flag, "We take the star from heaven, the red from our mother country, separating it with white stripes, thus showing that we have separated from her. And the white stripes shall go down to posterity, representing liberty." We have learned from the patriots before us that our Stars and Stripes is much, much more than a colorful banner. President Woodrow Wilson stated, "The things that the flag stands for were created by the experiences of a great people. Everything that it stands for was written by their lives. The flag is the embodiment not of sentiment, but of history. One of the best representations of this is the iconic photo and subsequent U.S., the photo that you're seeing on the screens in front of you, and the subsequent U.S. Marine Monument in Arlington, Virginia, of the raising of the Stars and Stripes on Mount Ceremony on the Pacific island of Iwo Jima. As Iwo Jima Marine veteran Ed Mahoney can attest, and I can verify from my visits to the U.S. Coast Guard Loran Station in Iwo Jima in the 1980s, Iwo Jima is one of the most God-forsaken places on earth. There is nothing pretty there. However, many lives were lost there for something much, much bigger than literally the stinking island itself. If you've ever been to Yellowstone and been to the sulfur steam streams that come up, that's what Iwo Jima smells like. The raising of the Stars and Stripes on Mount Ceremony by our Marines represents the best of our military's core values in service of our country. When you have spent time in the military and other public service organizations like the Sheriff and Fire Rescue Departments, you learn that the flag is much more than a piece of cloth with a symbolic design on it. Our military services and many public service organizations have core values such as loyalty, integrity, courage, commitment, selfless service, honor, respect, devotion to duty, and excellence. I believe that the threads of our flag are made from the application of these core values on a daily basis by those that serve, and that this has created our very, very special country, the USA. So why should we take the time to honor our flag and our country in a ceremony like this? President Ronald Reagan said it best when he said, "When we honor our flag, we honor what we stand for as a nation. freedom, equality, justice, and hope. At this time, I'm delighted to announce that the Grand Marshal for this patriotic event is Iwo Jima Marine veteran Edward Mahoney. The 75th anniversary of the Iwo Jima flag raising was on the 23rd February 2020. Mr. Mahoney will start the massing of the colors. Retired Army Colonel Barb Hart will introduce each participating color guard, and the Newsom High School Band will play Stars and Stripes Forever. Please stand if you are able and render a salute as the U.S. flag passes your location.
I will now present the pillars.
United States Central Command Joint Service Color Guard.
Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, left, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, left, right, 1.
Sun City Center, chapter of the Military Order of the World War Centennial Celebration. Clearwater, chapter of the Military Order of the World War's Centennial Celebration. American Legion, Post 246, Centennial Celebration. American Legion, U.S. Tampa, Post 5, Centennial Celebration. Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Hillsborough County Fire Rescue. Veterans Council of Hillsborough County. Sun City chapter of Military Officers Association of America. Disabled American Veterans, Chapter 110. Marine Corps League, Sergeant Ryan Detachment. of America, Chapter 787. Sun City Center Security Patrol. Daughters of the American Revolution, Colonel George Mercer Brooke, Chapter. Sons of the American Revolution, South Shore Chapter. Sun City Center, Scottish Rite Club. Sun City Center, Shrine Club. Durant High School, Air Force JROTC, Plant City. Leonard High School, Army JROTC, Ruskin. Steinbrenner High School, Army JROTC, Lutz. Spoto High School, Navy JROTC, Riverview. Steinbrenner High School, Army JROTC, Lutz. Boy Scouts of America, Troop 661.
Order. Arm.
Please continue to stand for the invocation by MOWW Chaplain Julian Graham, the Pledge of Allegiance led by Colonel Hart, and the national anthem played by the Newsom High School Band.
Humbly, we come before you. We ask your blessing on this symbol of our land, the symbol of our homes and of our liberties. We ask that you open our eyes and our hearts to appreciate the heritage which is ours. We revere these symbols of our nation's values and strength. Command us all to pledge anew our devotion to you and to our country, and to continue to lift the goals and standards of this country we love. Amen.
Present arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Ready, two.
Colors, rest. While they're coming to rest, I would just like to note that, wasn't that a tremendous procession of colors? Let's give them a great big hand. Please be seated. So my final question of the day, and I hope everyone's taking notes because there'll be a quiz at the end. What is the military order of the world wars? MOWW is the premier patriotic veteran service organization whose motto is, "It is nobler to serve than to be served." MOWW was founded at the suggestion of the General of the Armies, John Blackjack Pershing, in 1919 to promote good citizenship, patriotic education, and military and public service. This is accomplished in part by remembering the wars waged for humanity, fostering the love of our country and our flag, and furthering patriotic education in our nation. It is my honor to introduce the commander of the Sun City Center chapter of the Military Order of the World Wars, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Charles R. Conover. He will read the MOWW Constitution Preamble and introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Ron. Would all companions of MOWW please stand tall? To cherish the memories and associations of the world wars waged for humanity. To inculcate and stimulate love of our country and flag. To promote and further patriotic education in our nation. Ever to maintain law and order and to defend the honor, integrity, and supremacy of our national government and the Constitution of the United States. To foster fraternal relations among all branches of the armed forces. To promote the cultivation of military, naval, and air science, and the adoption of a consistent and suitable policy of national security for the United States of America. to acquire and preserve records of individual services, to encourage and assist in the holding of commemorations and the establishment of memorials of the World Wars, and to transmit all of these ideals to posterity. Under God and for our country, we unite to establish the military order of the World Wars. Hear, hear. Please be seated. The preamble has set the table for MOWW's 8 outreach programs. Those are patriotic education, ROTC, JROTC, scouting, law and order, national security, homeland security, veteran affairs and memorials and monuments. All of these programs are represented in this massing of the colors today. It couldn't be more fitting than to have Tampa Councilman Luis Vera as the keynote speaker. His public service has always shown his respect for and commitment to the military, veterans and first responders. Never more so than his role as the Community Committee Chair for the 2019 Tampa Warrior Games. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Vieira. He was raised in the North Tampa Bay, Temple Terrace area, and is a 2000 graduate of the University of South Florida, and in 2003 graduated from Stetson College of Law. He was admitted to the Florida Bar in 2003. Lewis is very active in his local community. He is the former chairman of the Hillsborough County Bar Association Diversity Committee and a former chairman of the City of Tampa Civil Service Board. He is a founder and president of Lawyers Autism Awareness Foundation and previously served on the board of Tampa Bay Best Buddies, an organization which assists and advocates for persons with special needs and developmental disabilities. He was also the incoming president of the Tampa Hispanic Bar Association and a member of the George Edgecombe Bar Association. As a Tampa City Councilman, Lewis previously served on the Hillsborough County Public Transportation Commission and serves on the Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization. He is also chairman of the Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization's Transportation Disadvantaged Committee. He is also a member of the Tampa Bay Transportation Management Area Leadership Group. Lewis lives in Hunter Green in New Tampa and has one son, Luis Vera II. Please welcome Luis Vera.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. So as you all can tell from my bio there, I'm a member of 2 of our community's most beloved profession, politicians and attorneys. If I could find a 3rd job as a used car salesman, then I'd be a real hit, you know. But it's a real honor to be here. And may I grab the microphone? Is that all right? I just never like talking into one. It's a real honor to be here today. I wanted to thank everybody with the Sun City chapter of Military Order of World Wars for having me here today. This is like it's a real honor for me. This really does mean a lot to me. You know, ever since I was elected and really before that, I've always been active with our first responders and veterans. But that's really one of the reasons why I ran for office, was so that I could transform that in a more official role through public service and elected office. I wanted to thank especially my friend Marine Major Jim Haney for inviting me. Thank you so much, sir. And also again acknowledge our wonderful honored guest, Mr. Ed Mahoney. Thank you for being here, sir. We really, really appreciate it. So we're here today for what we just saw, which was the massing of the colors, which is really about 2 things, which is number 1, to show a real genuine love, not just love of the United States of America, but what the United States of America really represents. We don't just love a land, we don't just love something that's material, but something with a heart and soul and character. And then really number 2, to show support for our veterans, those men and women who have served in uniform and who, when our country needs someone to be there on the front line, has always been there, from the Minutemen in 1775 and 1773, 74, 75, onward to today, that real noble tradition. I think that when you look at really what the United States of America means, at least to me, and I think to a lot of people, you have to look at something that we always hear about, which is a term called American exceptionalism. We hear a lot about that term, which is that we're an exceptional country. we're an exceptional country among other countries. I believe that. I believe that today, I'll God willing believe it 30, 40 years from now. I believe it, but the issue is, why do we believe that? What really makes the United States of America an exceptional country, different than Great Britain or France or anywhere else? What makes us a very exceptional country? Is it our might? Certainly, a country like ours, 300 plus million individuals, need to have might. We need to have muscle, right? But I would suggest what really makes us exceptional, you need two things in life, including in politics, by the way, and that's muscle and heart. And I would always say that when you take a look at the heart of the United States of America, what it means to be an American, what our 200 plus year-long journey means to the American spirit and the American character, you really see what American exceptionalism is all about. Take a look at the founding of our country. In 1776, my son, who's here, Lewis, I was recently studying with him civics, and we were going over the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, you know, the Intolerable Acts, all the way onward to the Constitution. And I'm a big U.S. history guy, so for me, that was like a lot of fun. It really beat studying math with him, because I hate math. But it was a good re-education. Again, I read a lot, but it was a great re-education to take a look at some of the exceptional things about the founding of our country, which is we were a country founded on the basic idea, which was radical at the time, which is that all individuals have equal rights. That there are certain rights that are not given to us by government, that are given to us by virtue of being born from God Almighty. That's where we get our rights. That's what the American Revolution was all about. But we know that at the time of the American Revolution, it was a radical concept at the time to say that white males who own property were vested with those rights. That was a real radical concept at the time. But we know that we've had an American journey, a journey of progress since then, where that original idea that those founding fathers risked their lives for, and they did risk their lives, because if they lost that war, they would be the first people to be hanged by the British, and that's a fact. But that general idea, we would see expanded. Under President Andrew Jackson, we would see that expanded to all white men in the country. Something, again, which was kind of radical at the time. Over the years, we would see under President Lincoln the idea that human chattel was immoral and ungodly and wrong. We would fight a war over it. And Abraham Lincoln would actually give his life ultimately for that idea. We would see more and more generations of Americans who would step up and say, you know what? That original idea y'all talked about, I belong in that idea. We would see women. We would see generations of immigrants, Polish immigrants, Italian immigrants, Russian immigrants, Jewish immigrants come forward and say, you know what? I belong in that dream too. That's my dream. I want to lay claim to that as an American. More and more people. We would see it in my own people. I'm always very proud of my heritage. My parents came here. And I'm not going to talk about politics, but we read a lot in the news about Cuba. My parents came from Cuba, 1960. My father was 16 years old. He moved over to East Tampa. My mom was 11 years old, and they moved, obviously separate families that didn't know one another, but they left Cuba once Fidel Castro took over, and they came here as Cuban refugees. I always say that I have a very, very unique perspective on what it means to be an American from that journey with my parents, learning about how they would go on from being individuals, and my grandfather, my grandparents, and my great-grandmother would go on from being individuals thinking, yeah, we're Cubans. We live in Cuba. And then suddenly one day the USSR comes in and goes, nope, everything's going to start changing, from bad to really, really bad. And we would leave, and we would become Americans. I would be raised as a proud American every single day. My father was always very, very proud of his Cuban background and his Cuban heritage, but there wasn't a day when we wouldn't have the American flag always out at our house. And we would always learn in my family that we should be so grateful, so very, very grateful for the sacrifices of people in this country to allow us to be Americans. And that's what really the American journey is all about, which is, frankly, our differences. We have a lot of things that unite us, but the unique thing about it being an American is that, at least it should be, that our differences don't have any bearing on those things that unite us. We believe as Americans in the idea of democratic rule, equality under law, the right to speak your mind out, religious freedom. That doesn't matter what God you worship. I happen to be Catholic. Our minister friend here is a United Methodist. Doesn't matter what God you worship. It has no bearing on how good of an American you are. That these ideas don't divide us whenever it comes to our larger uniting points as Americans. And that, to me, is really what American exceptionalism is all about. The idea that we're different. We are radically different. I would dare say there's probably been no other country around that is as diverse as the United States of America. We have so many differences. And I'll tell you what, to look at our differences, you need go no further than our military. We have an incredibly diverse military. Every year for I think this will be the 7th year, my son and I always go to Arlington Cemetery every summer. And we go take a couple of hours out to look at the graves, etc. And I always show him how diverse those graves are, how diverse the religious backgrounds of the people who have died for our country or who served in uniform and are no longer with us are. Because again, there is no religious litmus test. There is no cultural litmus test of being American. All that matters is that you ascribe to our timeless American values. Like General Colin Powell said, the individual who can trace his or her ancestry back to the Mayflower is just as American as that person who swore the oath today to be an American and got their citizenship. Their equality is the same, their rights are the same, and that heritage which they claim is the same. Just like it was from my parents over 60 years ago. That is really what I always say I think makes our country a very, very diverse or very exceptional type of a country. The second part of what we honor here today is our military. And one of the things that I've always found so interesting about the American military, I've never served in the military, but is the history steps of so many Americans throughout so many different generations who serve in the military to do one of really two things. Number one, to become an American. There are so many Americans, immigrants, and different folks who go into the military to prove their loyalty to this great country. And there's so many touching stories, or there's so many stories of individuals who go sign up in our military to fight for maybe a higher cause that our country doesn't take at that time. And there's so many examples of that. I think of the 54th Regiment, if any of y'all know of them, from Massachusetts. It was African Americans who fought in the Civil War in order to free their brothers and sisters from the shackles of slavery. Surely they signed up for an aspirational kind of patriotism. I think of our dear friends that I know my friend Larry Rivera knows about, the 65th Regiment, the Boricuaneers out of Puerto Rico, individuals who fought and shed blood for our country. And so many of them did it again, an aspirational patriotism. They believed in something greater than the reality. They believed in those original American promises, making it true to people here today in our own time. I think of the 369th, the Harlem Hellfighters out of New York, African Americans who would fight in Korea in World War II and give their life so often for their country in a time when their country would not be there for them. Again, they had aspirational patriotism. They wanted America to measure up to the love that they had in their heart for this great country. I think of the wonderful 442nd, the Go for Broke, and I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with them, Japanese Americans who during World War II, when so many of their families were being interned, they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to prove how much we love this country by fighting for this country in World War II in combat. There were about 10,000 members of the 442nd, Japanese Americans, and they were given almost 10,000 Purple Hearts. I believe the most decorated regiment or unit in United States military history was the 442nd. Again, talking about aspirational patriotism. I think of the late, great Medgar Evers, a civil rights hero who gave his life for this country for the right to vote. A lot of folks don't know that before Medgar Evers risked his life in Jackson, Mississippi, he risked his life with the U.S. Army in Normandy, fighting against the Nazis, trying to liberate France in World War II. I think of, talking about Iwo Jima, Ira Hayes, the great Native American who raised the flag. There he is right there raising the flag at Iwo Jima. A man who didn't at the time really know equality under the law, but he was a patriot who believed in a country that would be there for him and his people. Again, a measure up kind of an aspiration. And if there's really a story that I really think gets to the bottom of what I'm talking about, any of y'all ever heard of a man named Tibor Rubin? Ring a bell? Well, Tibor Rubin, a very interesting individual, he was given the Medal of Honor just about 14, 15 years ago. He was a Korean War veteran. Now, Mr. Rubin was in the Holocaust. He was originally from Hungary, and he lost his parents and both of his sisters in the Holocaust. And he would eventually, in 1948, immigrate to the United States. That very year, Tibor Rubin would try to sign up for the United States Army. English wasn't Mr. Rubin's first language, so he was denied access or admission to the military the first time. Then, thanks to some very compassionate test takers, Mr. Rubin passed the test. And immediately he was able to join in 1949. And guess what happened immediately? Korea. So Mr. Rubin volunteered to go over to Korea. And time again, the story goes that Mr. Rubin's commanding officer was a gentleman who was very anti-Semitic. They didn't hold Jewish individuals in very high esteem. And Tibor Rubin was a Jew and a very religiously devout Jew. And there were so many times when Tibor would put his life on the line in Korea for his brothers in arms in Korea, and yet that valor would never ever be recognized. Well, in October of 1950, Mr. Rubin would be captured as a prisoner of war by the North Koreans and the Chinese, and he would be there for 30 months. He would be there for 30 months, undergoing the kind of conditions that many of us, certainly myself included, really couldn't imagine. Starvation, hunger, disease, etc. Yet Mr. Rubin was the guy out of so many people there who were POWs who would sneak out in the middle of the night and steal food for his brothers in arms so they wouldn't die. He would encourage them, and he would always make sure to tell his brothers in arms there that I'm doing this because I'm Jewish, and that's what we're called to do, is to help our fellow men and women. Well, his North Korean and Chinese captors took a look at this guy, and they said, you know what? This guy's been an American for about a year. He's from Hungary, which is on the wrong side on our side of the Iron Curtain. And they go, what a great piece of propaganda. If we can tell this guy, tell us that this war is evil, tell us that the United States, a country that you just swore allegiance to a year ago, and now because of that, you're a POW, right? Tell us that this war is evil, tell us that the United States is evil, and we'll let you go. In fact, you can go back to your old country, and it'll be like old times. You know what Tibor Rubin told them? No, I'm an American. I'm gonna stay here. And because of that, Tibor Rubin would stay being captive for another year and a half, being tortured, being hungry, just being oppressed in every potential way. And you know why he did that? Because he was an American, because he knew when he was liberated from the Nazis, it was American soldiers who liberated Tibor Rubin, and he never forgot that. And he knew that being an American was a great gift. It was a great gift to him, and one day he knew if he got out of Korea, it would be a great gift to his children and grandchildren. Well, as the years went by, thank God, Tibor Rubin got out. And a lot of folks in the military would talk about this great man and the great acts of courage that he did, and how anti-Semitism from his commanding officer would preclude him from getting the honor that was his. Well, fast forward about 50 years, and President George W. Bush does the right thing and honors Tibor Rubin with the Medal of Honor. Today, and he's no longer with us, Tibor Rubin is known as many things, including a Medal of Honor recipient, but to me, Tibor Rubin is the kind of guy that really talks about what makes our country unique and what makes our military unique. Because throughout history, so many individuals have signed up for our military in an aspiration to show this country that I'm an American. Or alternatively, hey, I'm an American and I want y'all to measure up to the love that I have for this country. So many other great stories like that I could go into, but that's essentially what I think this event is all about, which is number one, honoring our country, but not just doing it in a sense that is procedural, but substantive. Really ask yourself, why do I love this country? What makes this country so unique? It's all of our differences. It really is. That to be an American, you don't have to be of a particular religious faith. You don't have to be of a particular skin color. You just have to believe in basic American ideals. And let me say about events like this today that these type of things are so important to have today, these kind of patriotic events. You all know why? Because we're so darn divided. I always say, and again, and call me naive, I always say that 80% of the American people can agree on 80% of the things out there. I really do believe that. But if you read the news, you don't get that kind of impression. But you know what? You take a look at the things that we honor here today. I don't see the word Republican or Democrat or independent or anything out there. I just see American. These are the kind of things that bring us together, and these are the kind of things that we need more of in our country as far as I'm concerned. But I just wanted to say that it's a real honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today, and God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was great. Thanks, Councilman Vieira. I think your remarks were absolutely spot on. And we appreciate very, very much the patriotism, the bringing up of all the historical aspects of talking about heroes, but talking about patriots and talking about what makes our country so great. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Color guards, prepare for carry colors.
Color guard, attention, hunt. Carry colors.
Please stand. The blessing of colors was provided by the MOWW Chaplain Graham.
We recognize, Father, that you have truly blessed this great nation. Blessed us with freedoms that few other nations can enjoy. We promise never to forget. May this flag's presence at all our gatherings be a constant symbol and reminder to us. We further realize that this flag, these 13 stripes of red and white, and these stars on a field of blue, symbolize over 240 years of the blood and sweat, tears and toils of our ancestors. We promise to uphold the loyalty to its standards and the sacrifices made by those ancestors as we journey through our lives.
Thank you, Chaplain Graham. Present arms.
Present arms.
We will now have a rifle salute followed by taps. Mr. Mahoney will now order the colors to retire from the auditorium. Please stand and render a salute as the U.S. flag passes your location. Remain at your seat after the colors have been retired to the Veterans Memorial And then the benediction will be provided by MOWW Chaplain Graham.
Remove the colors.
Right, face. Forward, arm, left, left, left,
With a very special thanks to this fine band. The music has been superb, as your own spirits of being Americans shows through it. To close this solemn meeting, I offer George Washington's prayer for his country. This prayer is read each day at Mount Vernon with a public wreath laying. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have the United States in his holy protection, that he would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for their brethren who have served in the field. And finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without an humble imitation of those examples in these things, we can never hope to be a happy nation. Amen.
Once again, thank you, Chaplain. President Ronald Reagan said this about our U.S. flag. As we think back over the history of our nation's flag, we remember that the story of its early years was often one of hardship and trials. Sometimes they fight for a simple survival. As the American Republic grew and prospered and new stars were added to the flag, the ideal of freedom grew and prospered from the rolling hills of Kentucky to the shores of California, to the Sea of Tranquility on the moon. Our pioneers carried our flag before them, a symbol of the indomitable spirit of a free people. Let us never forget that in honoring our flag, we honor the American men and women who have courageously fought and died for it over the last 200 years. Patriots who set an ideal above any consideration of self. Our flag flies free today because of their sacrifice. I'd like to thank all of those participating in and attending this patriotic massing of the colors ceremony today. Hopefully you've gotten rededicated to our flag and to our country. A very special thanks goes to retired Marine Major Jim Haney, project officer for this event, his project team, and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Conover, the MOWW Sun City Center chapter commander, for their efforts in making this event a success. God bless our Stars and Stripes flag, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Hillsborough County Fire Rescue.